Ruslan.
How do we avoid extremes? Avoid things, avoid camps, avoid groups, avoid churches that make non-essentials essential. Okay? Avoid churches or groups that make non-essentials essential. What am I talking about? I have no problem with someone saying, I lean towards Reformed theology. I am charismatic. I believe in the gifts of the Holy Spirit. I like this, right? But when people take non-essentials, like everything I just mentioned, Reformed theology is a non-essential in terms of predestination, or not predestination, election, right? And now those non-essentials become essential. Now everybody who doesn't believe what you believe about tongues or about election, they're all heretics and they're all false teachers. Okay, now you have really serious imbalance. And not everybody in these camps are like that, just to be honest, right? Not just to be clear. There are people that believe in tongues, but they're not going to tell you you're not saved for speaking in tongues, right? There are people that believe in tongues, but they're not going to tell you you're a JV Christian for not speaking in tongues, right? You guys see what I'm saying? There are people who align with Reformed theology or the opposite, Armenian theology, but they're not going to say if you disagree with them, you're not saved, or you're a heretic if you're a false teacher. When people start taking essentials, non-essentials, and making them essential, run. Be careful, because you're going to start sliding into extremes. And when you slide into extremes, you get unbalanced. And then one thing from your radical extreme view is going to get pulled, and the entire faith is going to collapse. And then you're going to be deconstructing. You're going to be questioning. Does it really mean? Do I really got it? Is God really real? Da, 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 right? So, hey, non-essentials becoming essential is a red flag. Okay, another one is when you're isolated from society. Isolation from society. When you aren't allowed to consume TV or a TV show, when the standard becomes so radicalized that you are literally discouraged from being around non-Christian friends, from consuming anything that's non-Christian, from affiliating with somebody of a different Christian persuasion. Okay, isolation from society is a red flag. Avoid that extreme. Okay, avoid that extreme. I'll go a little deeper. Isolation from society. When you start thinking that the rules or the best practices of whatever platform you want to be on, whatever business you want to be on, don't apply to you because you're saved, that's isolation from society. What do I mean? I mean, hey, there are certain best practices to do a YouTube page. There's certain best practices to make a song. There's certain best practices to write a book. There's certain best practices to be a good employee at your job. When you start thinking that you aren't accountable and you don't have to play by the rules because you're a Christian, I remember I had a friend. Oh, he worked at the mall. I love this dude. It's still one of my good friends. He worked at the mall, and he would leave and take these extended breaks while he was on the clock, and he would wander around the mall and talk to God, and he said God told him it was okay to do it because he was walking around the mall and witnessing to people while he was on the clock. Okay? Guess how long he had been walking with Jesus? Guess how long he'd been walking with Jesus? About 6 months, a year at that point, right? And God gave him the clearance. God gave him the permission to not have to be a good employee, to steal from his boss. That's what that is, right? When you're on the clock and you're doing non-related stuff, you're stealing from your boss. You're stealing from your employee. And he would walk around the mall praying, witnessing, meditating. And he told me it was cool because one day I showed up and I was like, yo, like I was just at the store, where are you at? And he was just like, yeah, I'm just wandering around talking to God. I'm like, what? No, bro, you don't do that. And they told me like, oh, he's clocked in, but we don't know where he's at. I'm like, bro, you've been gone. Like I've been looking for you. Where you at? Right? So isolation from society, isolation from just common sense tact and respect for your employer, for your spouse, for your family members, right? This is dangerous stuff, okay? Isolation from society. And the last one is starvation as sanctification. Starvation is sanctification. I talked about starvation mode with nutrition. If the only means for your sanctification in the community you're a part of, at the camp you're a part of, is just for you to starve yourself, for you to deprive yourself from any and all things, be careful. Be careful. Sanctification is the process of becoming more like Jesus. Sanctification is walking out your faith. Sanctification is growing in holiness. Sanctification is a combination of restriction and activity. It's a combination of cutting out the sugar and the really, really, really bad poison, right? Because there are some things where like I'm not listening to WAP, right? It doesn't make me religious. I'm just not listening to WAP. I have zero desire to listen to WAP. Zero. I have never heard that song. Believe it or not, never heard that song. Right? Never heard that song. So that is something that to me is just toxic. It's not healthy for me. Maybe my wife is. I don't know if my wife's heard it. She knows what the phrase is. I know what the phrase is. Haven't heard it. Never heard the song. Got no desire to hear the song. Okay. That is a restriction. I'm removing something that is just not harmful. I would say that that's like sugar, pure sugar, or poison, right? And then that there are other things that I do consume, right? And then the other side is activity. You got to be active. If the entire approach to your sanctification is strictly starvation, be careful. Be careful if it's just about not listening to Joe Rogan and not listening to Chance the Rapper and not listening to anybody and everybody's a fake Christian and everybody, right? And it's just about starvation. Be careful that's not healthy, right? So let's talk about building our faith. Well, how do we build our faith? What's the activity side? I want to take our head knowledge and I want to make it applicable. I want it to be something that can be measured, okay? So a great way is to, first of all, just know the essentials. Do you know what the essentials for the faith is, right? Do you have the head knowledge? Do you know what the basics of the faith is? Have you read 1 Corinthians 5? Have you read John 3? Have you read the book of Galatians? Have you read Ephesians chapter 2? Do you know what those close-handed essentials are? Do you know what those doctrines are that we say, no, we're not going to compromise on these? These we don't talk about, right? And I'm not talking about tongues. That is not an essential. I am not, right? I'm not talking about casting out demons. That is not an essential. I am not talking about election. That is not an essential, okay? I'm talking about those close-handed doctrines that throughout all of church history, more or less, folks have believed these essentials. Do you know what your essentials are? A great place to start is 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Jump over to John 3. Those are some great essentials for the faith, right? Know your essentials. The second thing is consume balance, but avoid sugar. Consume a balanced diet. Don't just listen to one type of teacher. Don't just, if you're in the Calvinist camp, make it a point to listen to some guys from the dude on Serotology 101. I think I said that word right. Boom. Listen to someone that's going to give you a different balance, right? Consume some different balance. If you always consume John MacArthur, mix it up and listen to somebody that's all the way on the other end of the spectrum, right? I'm not saying listen to heretics and false teachers. I'm saying have some balance in terms of what you're consuming, the type of books you're reading, while making an effort to reduce or avoid sugar, right? So for me, I told you guys, WAP, that's sugar. It's just pure sugar. It's not good. It's right. I have no desire to consume it. Zero, right? And I'm not listening to WAP, right? And sugar is a lot of times, for the health standpoint, one of the most important things. So consume balance, right? And then, gosh darn it, I did it again. Be active. That was the third point. Be active. Be active. Be active. What does active faith looks like? What does active faith look like? Okay, active faith. Serve. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for you to remain proud, for you to remain self-centered, for you to remain self-serving when you're making a point to serve people. When you're making a point to serve people. This is why the local church is essential in a lot of ways for our sanctification process, because you can now plug in and start serving people, okay? Serve people. Why? Because when you serve, it takes the attention off of you. When you serve, you get out of your own head. When you serve, you get out of your own problems. It's very difficult to be a prideful jerk when you have to be in a state of mind where you know Sunday you're going to go teach to second graders. You ever been around second graders? It's not easy, right? Their attention span is very low, right? It's very difficult for you to be obsessed with who you are and your problems when you have to serve. And so serving, for me, has been extremely helpful. I'm talking about, I've done everything in my local church. Everything from cleaning the toilets to preaching on the main Sunday morning platform. From teaching and watching the kids. One of my pastor's oldest daughter just got married. She just turned 22. I remember serving and teaching her Sunday school class when she was like 5. Right? And imagine seeing somebody as a kid, being able to be a part of their development spiritually to a small extent. It's not like I did a whole lot. I taught like a couple Sunday school classes, and now seeing her grow up, flourish, get married. She's 22 now. It's incredible. Awesome husband. Awesome, right? That stuff is really cool for our development, but as well just to serve and pour into people, right? So serving easily takes the attention off of you. Serving makes it not about you and makes it about other people. I'm gonna make a wild statement, and I'm not talking about people who are chemically bipolar. I'm not talking about people who have an imbalance. I'm talking about if you are going through a season of dryness, if you're going through a tough season where maybe your mental health, you don't feel so good, being active, literally being active outdoors and getting vitamin D, as well as being active in your local church and serving could be one of the best ways to work through your depression. I'm talking seasonal depression, so please don't misunderstand me. One of the best ways to work through and push through, because you're taking the attention off of yourself and your problems and you're making it about other people. So serving, I think, is really key. And it also allows you to try different things within the church to see what you're good at. The second thing I would say is fellowship. Fellowship, get around people, get around community, right? As we're starting to turn the corner on the whole pandemic, we're starting to get back into meeting in person, all of these different things. Fellowship is so key, man. Since the pandemic, God has sent some amazing men of God, amazing day ones back into my life that I've known for a long time that have helped me so much by just being there, by just listening. By a lot of these videos that you guys see is me fleshing this stuff out with them, right? So you guys, like, I don't wing this. I've already either taught this or I'm already walking through this. Like this conversation I had with my buddy Zach and Christian this morning at basketball. Zach is a certified trainer. He's helped people lose hundreds of pounds in weight. He's a church planter at Collective Church. I walked through this. Why? Because I had fellowship. Playing basketball is fellowship. It's not always this super duper spiritual thing where we start and we hold hands and we pray and we sing and worship. It's just a bunch of Christian brothers, playing hoops together and encouraging each other. We got like the most encouraging group of dudes on a basketball court. I'm talking like somebody makes a shot on me and I'm like, yo, good job, good shot. Like I'm complimenting the opposing team. We're in a spirit of fellowship. It is so good for your soul to find a community of brothers, sometimes from your local church, sometimes from across multiple churches. I'm in a place where I fellowship with folks from different churches, and it's really, really cool, okay? And the last one I would say is give. Now, this is going to be the tough one because we're going to get into the, Ruslan, are you promoting a literal tithe, or are you just saying we should just give? Right? Listen, Linda, listen. It doesn't matter to me what you do, as long as you're giving and sacrificing in some way, shape, or form. We're not going to open the can of worms on literal tithe. We did a whole live stream about that. You can go watch that. You can learn my exact position. I'm not going to get into that. But if you're not in a position where you're regularly practicing that discipline of giving to a local ministry, giving to people in your life that you know are going through it, looking for opportunities to be a blessing. And this is why I do encourage financial literacy. This is why I do encourage these things. Guys, it is so amazing. It is so incredible to be in a position where you could be a blessing to whatever degree, buying somebody lunch, buying somebody coffee. Me and Levi were doing this thing, which was super fun. We'd go through the Chick-fil-A. This is at the beginning of the pandemic. And we'd go through, we'd order our food, and then whoever was behind us, we would just cover their bill. We just covered their bill. And it became this thing where he was so excited to do it, right? It's just a general act of giving will make sure that money is not your God. Understand the cost. What does it cost you, which is everything. Salvation is not just a prayer, you said. Jesus is not just an accessory. He's not just your co-pilot, right? Jesus is the entire engine of the operation. So understanding to properly construct your faith on what it actually means. 2, avoiding the extremes. 3, having your essentials down, knowing what your essentials are. And 4, living an active faith, a faith where you are not just passively consuming the word of God. You just listen to a bunch of stuff, you're consuming a bunch of stuff, but you're really just getting spiritually obese. You're really just kind of coasting. a lot of times that will lead you down to being lukewarm and deconstruction and all these things. And I want to avoid that. I want you to avoid that pain. I want you to avoid that heartache. I want you to avoid that tension in your family, in your marriage, right? Have a simple faith, but have an active faith. Hopefully this has been helpful to you guys. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. I appreciate you.
King's Dream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Yeah, conversations front of the fireplace. All of my mistakes, how do I erase? Wanna operate at a higher pace. Birth pains causing the body to dilate. On a first name basis with the worst pain facing. Moments in isolation. See, I was hoping I would